Welcome back, everyone. Today I'm going to be working on a new refrigerator magnet. The world always needs more refrigerator magnets. And today's critter is going to be a Dunkleosteus. I'll make a handful of these and I'll be selling them at the crafts fair. Alright, well, we're going to work on the base. Going to make it big enough to put the fossil part of it, which mostly just going to be the armor plating around the head, but it's still got to make it thick enough to support the strong magnet that I'm going to put on there so it doesn't snap when you pull it off the refrigerator. And this picture here is going to be the reference that I'll be going off of for the most part. Alright, using some clay softener on here to remove all my fingerprints and everything, and then we're going to get that into the oven. Alright, fresh out of the oven, let it cool down for a little bit, and then we'll start working on it. Alright, put some clay softener on here, make the surface a little bit more tacky for the new clay. Alright, for the clay today, the base is going to be made out of Super Sculpted Original, and then for the actual fossil part, we're going to be using Super Sculpted Living Doll. Alright, we're going to start with the head plate here, and then we're going to build it up in layers, being that the top part is going to be the actual fossil and the armor plating. Underneath is going to be the rock and the matrix holding it up. Get some more clay softener on there, remove fingerprints. The technique that I'm using here is I'm going to put down the first piece, get that shaped the way I want it, and then get it in the oven, bake it, harden it so I can put in the other pieces around it without having to really damage it and still get aggressive to get the shape that I want. So we're essentially here just building out the shape and getting the form in there, and we'll slowly go back in, bulk it out with some more clay, and get the final details. Alright, still working on the upper jaw part here. Around this area we're going to fill it in and get the shape we're looking for. Add more clay, keeping it lifted up. I want that three-dimensional view there, and then still try and keep the real strong definition in between the armor plating. Alright, working on the top chompers, and they didn't really have teeth, they're just kind of extra blades that had a scissor action for cutting into flesh, I guess. Looking at this reference, I can see like a couple extra layers of plating, it looks like. Yeah, that top plating looks a little bit small, so I'm going to extend it out a little bit right here. Alright, looks good. We'll go with that. Alright, now the main frontal dental plate. Now this is kind of a long video for such a small project. The overall time for sculpting this is about 4.5 hours, and we're only putting about 20 minutes of it down here. But I do make a lot of corrections as I'm going through this, and I kind of want to show it in this video. Alright, working on the back armor plate here, and we're going to just get it in and work on it from there. We'll be bulking it out and getting a good shape on it. I'll eventually come back and be adding some more, and we'll find out that that back part of the base that I have is a little bit too small, and we'll have to expand on that. Now here I'm trying to put in the separation between the fossil armor plating and the matrix rocks underneath. Alright, now we're going to start working on the lower jaw. Just going to get that basic shape in, and then we'll come back and work on the detail. Alright, looking at my reference, I'm going to need to start building this up a little bit. I want to blend it in really good and round it up off the top. Yeah, so I'm going to end up having to come down here, so we're going to add some more clay here. Alright, get it all blended in really good, and add some texture using the just the tips of the bristles on this paintbrush. Alright, well, the fossil is showing these kind of the blades, or they're kind of beveled in a little bit, so we're going to cut that in there too and try and get a good representation of that. Yep, can't forget his eyebrows. Looks like another piece of armor plating just kind of overlaps here, so we'll get that in there. In the reference it shows there's some more armor plating underneath, covering its throat or its gullet. We're going to have to add that on there. I'm going to have to also extend that base clay again further back so it can accommodate that extra plating. Alright, we'll get this extra piece on, we'll get it blended in again using the same texture. And I think this back plating there is a little bit too small, so we're going to make this a little bit bigger too. So we have to again add some more clay to that, go back and redefine the shape. Yeah, I think that's the kind of shape that I'm looking for here. And then having it hang over a little bit off the base there kind of gives it a little bit more dimension. Alright, let's go ahead and add that extra clay for that lower armor gullet covering. Now the reference that I'm using kind of shows a pretty good gap between the main head plating and I would say the shoulder plating if it had shoulders. But looking at other references, they're showing that the plating, there's no gap or very little gap. So I'm going to try and meet that in the middle. So we're going to cut this apart. We're going to shave it down as close as we can and then put the two pieces back together again. Now I did just pull this out of the oven so that clay is kind of soft for my blade to go through. Yeah, I think that's about what we can do there. I'm going to put some bacon bond in there, and we're going to fill that gap in and try and blend it all in with some more clay. I need to get a new bottle of bacon bond. Alright, so right above the head there was just a little bit too much clay that was exposed for my liking, so I cut that off and we added some more clay and rounded it off and retextured it all. Now I'm going to go in with this X-Acto blade and etch in some cracks and crevices, some seams, and see if that shows up in the mold. All right, well, that looks pretty good. Let's get ourselves a little box made up and get this molded. All right, a couple of beads of hot glue to hold it secure so it doesn't float when we pour in the silicone. Well, this is my go-to silicone, equal parts of both A and B. It's a really strong silicone and gets all the detail I need. And get that mixed up and poured in. Pour it in, aiming for all the cracks. I'm going to push out all those air bubbles so we don't show up in the mold. Alright, get every last drop here. Doesn't do any good for it to stay in the cup. And then we'll check all the edges, make sure we don't have any leaks. I don't know if you can see it or not. You got some of these little tiny air bubbles coming to the top and popping. Alright, well, here we go. It only takes about 4 to 6 hours for this to cure really good. Let's get this all demolded. Alright, get the X-Acto blade, cut all this back flashing here, and we'll have a one-piece open back mold. Alright, the medium that we're going to be using is gypsum, so get that water in there, mix it up. We don't want it too thin, we don't want it too thick. We want to be able to get into all those cracks and details. I'll pour it in. Usually it takes about 15-20 minutes to set, depending on your temperature. We're going to put that in the pressure pot and then we'll take a look. Alright, looks like this mold is a winner. I don't see any defects in here, no bubbles, no extra, so did a good job. Alright, well, we got 4 casts and all painted up, so we're going to use some UV resin on here, and I'm going to realize that that was a mistake too. It just covers up too much of the detail, and you'll see that here in the pictures. So we got this all poured out and spread out ×4, and then we'll show you the results here. While I'm waiting for that to cure under the UV, I'm going to go ahead and start painting up the rest of them. Alright, for the rest of these I used the Minwax Spray Lacquer High Gloss. I think it got good coverage, still shows the detail, and a little bit of protection. So yeah, here you can see the detail really comes through. Still got a bit of a sheen, so I think it looks pretty good. And in comparison, you can see the UV kind of really covered in all that detail. I mean, it looks nice, but you really can't see the shapes that you can see in the other one. And using a wash in these lighter colors, you can really see the detail. Not like the darker one where we used the UV resin. And here's a couple of the final ones that I finished. I'll probably make up a good dozen of these, and then we'll head out to the craft fair and see if they sell. Thanks for watching.